Hi guys, it's Kelly Latabola here. I'm back with another video for W+9. Today we're going to be doing something a little different. So we're going to be adding color to the background and leaving our image white, which I think is such a striking combination. But we're also going to be comparing distress inks versus distress oxides. So I'm using the Southern Sentiments and also the beautiful Bouquet Ranunculus. So I got out my mini Misty because I wanted to stamp a couple of different ones of these. Before I get into the actual stamping, I just wanted to show you this neat little trick that I learned. So I took the acetate off of the back of my stamp and I placed it on my paper because my stamp is dirty. And since I'm going to be repeatedly stamping the same stamp but in different locations, I'm going to have to keep cleaning it every time. So by putting that acetate in place, it allows me to place the stamp on my card where I want it without getting it dirty. So just a neat little trick for you there. I'm going to be using W+9 Pure Black dye ink to stamp these down because I'm not doing really any Copic coloring. So I'm just going to stamp them. And I did 3 different positions. I actually only ended up using 2. Well, it's 4, but 2 positions. So I'm just going to stamp that down. This one I kind of did off to the right. This one I did in the center, and I'm using that same little acetate trick there so I don't have to keep cleaning it in between because I'm lazy. And I'm putting the same color of ink down. I just don't want it to get all over my card. And then the last one I did, which I didn't show, was I stamped it in the bottom left-hand corner. So this is such a versatile stamp. You can do so many things with it, and this is just something else. So I wanted to compare not so much how they worked, the distress oxides and the distress inks, because I already kind of know that, but I wanted to compare the colors. And I've been in this scene situation lately where I've just been making a ton of scenes, so I thought that this would be a fun way to kind of play with colors without, making such an elaborate scene. I cut a mask for this with Eclipse paper. I will not lie to you, this was a very intricate mask to cut. It didn't take me too long, but there were some areas where I couldn't completely cut them out. And if I had to do this again, I probably wouldn't because it ended up looking kind of cool. There were some white areas in there. And then I also wanted a white border around this. So I have 2-inch wide Post-it note tape and I just cut them down so that they would be 1/4 of an inch wide, and it was perfect. I had 4 strips to do each side and just kind of tore them off at the ends. I did fold over the ends so that I wouldn't catch them with my ink blending tool and lift them up. So for the first one, I'm going to use picked raspberry, spiced marmalade, and fossilized amber. And this is the actual distress inks. Now, I feel like, okay, so the distress oxides have they're mixed with pigment. And so they have a chalk-like finish. And it's just, to me, not as bright as the regular distress inks. Now, with that said, you do have to work a little bit harder with the distress inks, and especially if you have something this intricate. You can see sometimes after I rub you want to start off your page and be blending onto the paper. So blending as you're coming onto the paper. But because this is such an intricate mask, I did have some lifting. Eventually, I just stopped fighting it, and I'll show you how we fix it at the end. But one of the things that you can do so that you're not constantly lifting up that mask is once you get most of the color off of the ink blending tool, that would be better, I guess, you can turn it. So just kind of like turn it in a circular motion in place. You don't want to start off that way because you'll end up leaving like a big blob on your paper. But once you have the majority of the ink off, there's still ink left on that foam pad. So you totally can just do that turning trick and it doesn't move the mask nearly as much. So this one's done. When you're taking off the masking paper, you want to make sure that you're very careful with your inky fingers because you want to keep that border nice, clean, and white. So if you have ink on your fingers, which typically we all do after we do distress inking, you want to make sure that you're not really touching your borders there. Now, when I was pulling up my mask, because this is a very intricate mask, it did start to tear in some places. I wasn't that concerned about it because I knew I could kind of like puzzle piece it back together. Like you can see that right at the top right, that flower tore off. For the next one, I just put it back in place and it was fine. But for the areas that do lift on you, one of the tricks I've learned is you can use Tembo Mono Multi-Glue. It dries repositionable, so if you just put a dot on there and just kind of smear it around, it will help to keep that portion of the mask like extra sticky and keep it down. So now I've put everything back in place. These are the same masks I was using before, and now this time I'm going to do the Distress Oxide. I will tell you, you don't have to go over this nearly as much because they are pigment inks. They are, the coverage is much more opaque. So I didn't have to work as hard. Again, because with this being an intricate mask, the Distress Oxides might be a better bet with that because you don't have to work as hard and you don't have to go over the area as many times. But I did notice with the color blending that the colors, they do blend, but if you want to change an area, like you want there to be more mixing, and you try to go over one, like a darker color with a lighter color, it doesn't really blend that great. Just because I didn't really have any issues with this one, but in the other card I used some cooler colors, and I did have just a little bit of trouble blending them because they're pigments and they're designed to kind of sit on top of each other. Here I felt like my spice marmalade was not as dark as I wanted it to be, so I ended up going back in just to kind of darken that up a little bit. And then we're going to do the magic of the masking, pulling off all of the masking paper. And if you wanted to be careful before with the regular Distress ink, you want to be exceptionally careful removing the mass of Distress Oxides because they stay wet a lot longer, being that pigment base. So I really love the way that both of these designs came out. I love that that boldness of the white flower with the black outline and the bright colors. I think it's just really, really pretty. The other combination that I used, I didn't show you because everybody's seen ink blending 100 times, but it was Wilted Violet, Salty Ocean, and Peacock Feathers. So that's what this one is. And you can see the Distress Oxides on the right. The regular Distress ink is on the left. And I don't know if you can tell on camera, the blending on the right is for the Distress Oxides obviously much smoother, but the brightness level is much higher on the left-hand side. I'm going to add in, this is W+9, what is it, spray, it's shimmer spray. That's what it is. Woo, Kelly. And I just shook it up to get the shimmer off the bottom, and then I took the nozzle out and used the tube, the spray tube, to just kind of splatter some shimmer onto each of the backgrounds, just to kind of break up that color, add in some interest, and of course the shimmer, because I'm all about the shimmer. Once that was completely dry, this is how I'm going to fix those areas where my mask came up. I'm just going to go in with a white gel pen. It covers it up really nicely, and you don't even really know that there were any errors. If you don't like the white parts in between, the way that you can fix that, I didn't because I didn't mind them, but you can find a Copic color that matches and then just go in and go right over those white areas and it'll blend in. If you got a good match on your marker, it'll blend in and nobody will even know. So for those Southern Sentiments, I just picked a couple of them, and I'm going to, they're really bold sentiments, which I super love. And I'm just going to go in and stamp a different one for each card. So this particular one says Bless Your Heart, which is super cute. I'm doing it in my Misty because they are bolder sentiments, and in case I don't get good coverage or I don't get good pressure, whatever, I want to make sure that I'm able to fix them. For this layout, I'm going to put the sentiment in the top right-hand corner because that made more sense. For this particular layout, the eye kind of comes up from the bottom left and leads directly to that top right corner. So that's where I put the sentiments for those. The last thing that I'm going to do is I have these clear Nuvo drops, and I'm going to use those to accent the sentiments for each one of these and just set them aside to dry. Those particular ones do dry matte, but it's enough to draw attention to the card. So those are all 4 of them. I hope that this was helpful in seeing kind of the difference, and then also a clean and simple look that is pretty easy to achieve. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.